I want to explain what I do before I tell you what I saw, because what I do is the reason you should take this seriously. I am an emergency alert system coordinator for the state of Georgia. I have been doing this work for 11 years. My job is to sit at a workstation and watch the feed of alerts moving through the emergency alert system for the state of Georgia and the surrounding region, verify that alerts are properly formatted and sourced, flag technical problems, and maintain the logs that document what the system sends and when it sends it. I do not decide when to issue warnings. I am not the person who determines that a tornado is approaching, or that a dam is at risk, or that a public health emergency requires immediate public action. I am the person who makes sure the warning reaches the device in your pocket in the seconds after that decision is made, correctly formatted and properly targeted and carrying the exact language that was drafted and approved by the authorized originating authority. It is not a glamorous job. Most people do not know it exists. I find satisfaction in it anyway, because I am the kind of person who finds satisfaction in doing a specific thing with sustained attention and consistent precision. And this work requires both of those things every shift. In 11 years, I have seen everything the emergency alert system produces. Tornado warnings, flash flood emergencies, amber alerts, civil emergency messages, required monthly tests, presidential alerts, the full range of what the system is built to carry. I have seen alerts with formatting errors and targeting mistakes. I have seen system glitches and poorly timed tests. I have seen cancellations issued before the original alert reached most devices. I have seen all of it, and I know this system the way a person knows something they have been paying close, careful attention to for over a decade. I have never seen an alert like the one I saw on a Wednesday evening in March. It was midway through my Wednesday evening shift, which is the quietest shift of the week, when the alert came through the feed. The originating source was the Tallow County Emergency Management Office, which is a county emergency management operation in the rural south of Georgia. I know Tallow County from the system the way I know all the counties in the state, as an administrative and geographic unit with a certain volume of alerts per year, mostly weather-related. Nothing that had ever required anything beyond routine processing from my end. The alert was routing correctly, and the source code was valid, and the technical formatting was exactly right. I read the content. I read it 3 times before I did anything else, which is what I trained myself to do with unusual content. Read it completely and slowly before reacting. The alert was categorized as a civil emergency message. Geographic targeting was Tallow County only. Issuance time was correct. Every technical element of the structure was precisely as it should be. The text said this: residents of Tallow County are advised that a civil emergency condition is in effect for the unincorporated areas south of the Sable Creek drainage. Residents in affected areas should move to the interior rooms of their homes immediately and remain there until this message is cancelled. Do not open exterior doors or windows. Do not respond to sounds originating outside your home. This message will be updated as the situation develops. In 11 years of monitoring this system, I have read thousands of civil emergency messages. They are issued for hazardous material releases, for law enforcement situations, for dam failures, for infrastructure emergencies, for any situation where the public needs to take specific, immediate protective action. Every civil emergency message I have read in 11 years names the reason. The reason is always there, because the reason is what tells people what the threat is and how long to shelter, and when it is safe to come out. This alert did not name a reason. It said a civil emergency condition was in effect. It did not say what the condition was. I sat with that for a moment. I have learned over 11 years that most things that look wrong have explanations that become visible with a few more minutes of looking. A missing reason could be a drafting error by an inexperienced emergency manager at the county level. It could be a text clipping issue in the system. It could be several things before it had to be something I had not seen before. I pulled up the contact information for the Tallow County Emergency Management Office and called. No answer. I tried the after-hours line. No answer. I logged the alert as pending verification and kept watching the feed. 40 minutes later, the second alert came through from the same origination point. The second alert was formatted as a civil emergency message update, the standard form for revising an active alert. I read it immediately. It said the civil emergency condition in the unincorporated areas south of the Sable Creek drainage remained in effect. It said residents who had not yet moved to interior rooms should do so immediately. And then it said something I had not seen before in 11 years of monitoring this system. It said the emergency condition was mobile and moving in a northerly direction, and it said the alert area was being expanded to include all unincorporated areas of Tallow County, mobile and moving in a northerly direction. I sat with that language for a moment. In this system, mobile and moving describes weather. It describes a tornado or a wildfire or a flooding front. It does not describe a hazardous material release, which is the most common trigger for a rural county shelter-in-place order. Hazardous material releases do not move in a northerly direction in the deliberate way that language implied. The phrasing had the quality of something being tracked, something with its own movement and its own direction, something whose position was being actively monitored by whoever was issuing the alert. I tried the Tallow County lines again. Both rang without answer. I called my supervisor, Pat, who has been with the agency for 20 years, and told her what I was looking at. She pulled up the alerts on her own terminal. She was quiet for a moment. She told me to try the Georgia Emergency Management Regional Director for the South and to keep watching the Tallow County feed. I called the regional office. The duty officer that night was a man named Carl, who had not seen the alerts yet. He pulled them up while we were on the phone. He was quiet for longer than Pat had been. He said he would try to reach someone in Tallow County directly and asked me to stay on the feed. 20 minutes later, the third alert came through. The third alert expanded the emergency area into the southern portions of 3 adjacent counties as the condition continued moving northward. I processed the expansion through the system, and then I read the new language that had been added to the instructions, and I called Carl back before I had finished reading it. The new language said residents were advised that the emergency condition did not respond to light or sound, and that attempts to observe or signal the condition from exterior windows or doorways may increase individual risk. Does not respond to light or sound. I read it to Carl on the phone. He was quiet. Then he said he had reached Tallow County. He said the Tallow County emergency manager was a man named Roy, who had been in that job for 22 years, a man Carl knew personally and respected. Roy was currently at the County Emergency Operations Center issuing these alerts himself. I asked Carl what Roy had told him the emergency condition was. Carl said Roy had described it as a local matter that the county had protocols for, and that the alerts were correct and the instructions should be followed. He said Roy did not explain what the condition was and did not answer follow-up questions about the specific language. And Carl had the clear impression that Roy was not going to answer those questions regardless of who asked them or how many times. I asked Carl whether he thought the alerts were legitimate. Carl said they were originating from a valid source, using valid credentials, and the technical content was correct by every measure the system applied. He said Roy had been the Tallow County emergency manager for 22 years and Carl had no grounds to override him. He told me to keep watching the feed. He hung up. I sat at my workstation in the quiet of the state agency office and looked at the words "does not respond to light or sound" on my screen and thought about Roy, who had been managing something for 22 years and who had protocols for it. And I thought about whoever had written that specific sentence into those protocols and what they had seen that made them reach for that particular language. I have contacts across the emergency management system in Georgia and the surrounding states that I have built over 11 years of doing this work well and showing up reliably. I used some of those contacts over the following hours while I watched the feed. I reached a woman named Gloria, who works emergency management in a county adjacent to Tallow County and has been in the region for 15 years. I described the alerts without reading the full text and asked if she had any context for what might be happening in the southern part of Tallow County. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said that Tallow County had its own way of handling certain situations, and that she had always understood it as a county with some locally specific emergency management considerations that did not come up in regional coordination meetings. She said she had never asked Roy about it directly because Roy was private about his operation and had been doing it for a long time and clearly knew what he was doing. She said she had heard, in the way professionals in a specialized field hear things without being told them directly, that the southern part of Tallow County had a particular history with certain weather-adjacent events that Roy managed quietly. I asked what weather-adjacent meant. She said she did not know exactly. She said that was the word she had heard used, and she had never pushed on it because it fell outside her area of responsibility. I asked if she knew whether anyone had ever been hurt in connection with these events. She said not that she had heard of. She said the management approach, from what she understood, had always worked, and it had been working for a long time before Roy, and presumably for a long time before whoever held the job before Roy. After I hung up, I sat with that, before Roy, and before whoever held the job before Roy. Protocols that had been passed down through the position, through the specific accumulated knowledge of a county emergency management office, carrying language that someone had developed from experience with the event and had put into the official protocol so that the people who came after would have it even if they did not have everything else. Someone wrote, "Does not respond to light or sound for the first time." In some drafting session for the Tallow County emergency protocols, at some point before Roy took the job, someone who had watched the condition move through the county enough times to understand its properties reached for that language and put it in the official alert text. And it had been there in the protocol ever since, waiting for the next time the condition moved up from south of Sable Creek and Roy needed to warn his county about it. Roy did not write that sentence. Roy inherited it. I did not expect Roy to answer when I called the Tallow County Operations Center directly, but he answered on the second ring. His voice had the quality of someone who had been making practical decisions under pressure for a long time. Steady, considered, not unfriendly, but focused in the specific way of a person managing an active situation. I identified myself and told him I had been monitoring the Tallow County feed and had questions about the language in the third update. He said the alerts were correct, and the language was correct, and the situation was being managed. I said I understood that, and I told him I appreciated that he was in the middle of something, and I would be brief. I asked what the situation was. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said that was a fair question from someone in my position, and that he appreciated that I had called him directly rather than going further up the chain, and that he was going to tell me what he could tell me. He said Tallow County had a recurring event that affected the southern unincorporated areas. It happened with a regular frequency. The county had been managing it for longer than he had been, the emergency manager. The event involved something that moved through the area, and the shelter-in-place protocol was the correct and established response, and it had worked every time it had been followed. I asked what the something was. He said he did not know. He said he had been doing this job for 22 years and had managed this event 8 times and did not know what it was. He said the people who developed the protocols had a clearer understanding of it than he did, and that understanding was not fully passed down with the job. Only the protocols, and the protocols worked, and that was what mattered. He said there had been no casualties associated with the event in any occurrence that he had any record of, as long as the protocol was followed. He said the protocol was being followed tonight. He said the alert would be cancelled when the condition had cleared the county to the north, which he expected would be in the next few hours, and I should watch for the cancellation. I asked if there was anything he needed from my end, anything about the way the alerts were routing or performing. He said the system was doing exactly what he needed it to do, and he was grateful it was working, and he would call if anything changed. He hung up. I sat at my workstation and thought about 8 times in 22 years and no casualties as long as the protocol was followed, and I do not know what it is. I thought about what it meant to manage something for 22 years without knowing what it was. I thought about the kind of professional confidence that came not from understanding, but from the track record of the protocol, the accumulated evidence of 8 events handled correctly with the tools you were given. Roy was not frightened. That was the thing that stayed with me most clearly from the call. He was a man in the middle of an active situation that involved something he could not name, and he was not frightened. He was working. The cancellation came through a few minutes past 2 in the morning. Standard format, properly sourced. Civil emergency condition in Tallow County has passed. Residents may resume normal activities. I processed it through the system. Then I looked at the path the alerts had described over the course of the evening. The condition had started in the southern, unincorporated areas of Tallow County. The second alert expanded coverage as it moved north through the county. The third alert pushed into 3 adjacent counties as it continued moving north. And then it was done. The cancellation came out of Tallow County, and no alerts came through from the counties further north in the hours after. I watched the feed for 2 more hours. Nothing. I do not know what to make of that. I filed it with the other things I could not resolve and went home when my shift ended and slept badly and came back for the next shift. A few days later, I reached a county emergency manager named Fletcher, who oversaw one of the 3 counties that had been included in the third alert. He had received the Tallow County alert through regional coordination channels and had watched the situation. He told me that when he saw the expansion into his county's southern area, he had driven out to the affected area himself to assess whether his own office needed to issue a local order. I asked what he found. He was quiet for a moment. He said he drove to the southern edge of the affected area and sat in his truck on the county road and looked at the sky and the fields. He said he did not have a way to describe what he saw exactly, only that there was something in the southern sky that he could not identify, and that was moving, and that 16 years of emergency management experience produced in him a very strong instinct that the Tallow County alert was correct, and that what he should do was get back in his truck and drive back to town, which he did. He said by the time he got back, the condition had apparently moved on. He said the air felt different, and he knew that was not a precise or useful description, but it was the most accurate one he had. There had been a quality to the air in the area when he arrived that was gone when he returned, and by morning everything looked exactly as it always did. I asked if he had called Roy afterward. He said yes, the next day. He said Roy was cordial and professional and confirmed that the situation had resolved and that the county protocols had performed as expected. He said Roy answered his general questions about the protocol without fully explaining the underlying event, and that Fletcher had the impression this was not Roy avoiding the question, but Roy genuinely not having the answer and having made his peace with that a long time ago. I thanked Fletcher and hung up. I thought about Roy making his peace with not knowing. I thought about what that peace looked like after 22 years. Not resignation, not willful ignorance. Something more like the working relationship a skilled professional develops with the specific constraints of their particular job, the acceptance of the terms of the work as the terms actually are rather than the terms you would have chosen. Roy had the protocols. The protocols worked. He had managed the event 8 times, and every time it came through, he issued the alerts with the correct language, and the people who followed the instructions were safe, and the condition moved on, and the county went back to being the county. That was the job. Roy did the job. I want to tell you what I understand now that I did not understand before that Wednesday evening, because I think It is something that people who pay close attention to emergency alerts should know. I spent 11 years believing, without ever quite examining the belief, that the emergency alert system was a complete accounting of the emergencies it was designed to communicate. That the categories it used were the categories that covered everything that needed to be warned about. That the language in every alert corresponded to something in the world that could be named and described in the terms that official emergency management used to describe things. I still believe the system works. I want to be plain about that because it is the most important thing, and I do not want the rest of what I am saying to obscure it. The Tallow County alerts went to every device in the affected area within seconds of being issued. The instructions were correct. The people who followed them were safe. The system performed exactly as it was designed to perform, and the outcome was the outcome the protocols were designed to produce. The system works. What I have adjusted is my understanding of the relationship between the system and the full range of what it is warning about. There are authorized origination points for emergency alert system messages that have been authorizing the same alerts in some form for longer than the current holders of those positions have been in the job. There are civil emergency messages with language in them that was developed by people who are no longer in the position, whose full understanding of the situation they were managing did not fully transfer when the job changed hands, but whose protocols did transfer because the protocols were what worked, and what worked was what mattered. Does not respond to light or sound. Mobile and moving in a northerly direction. Do not respond to sounds originating outside your home. Someone wrote each of those sentences for the first time. They wrote them because they were accurate, because the accumulated experience of managing this specific event in this specific county had taught them those things were true, and they put that truth into the protocol in the plainest language they could find so that the next person would have it. The next person had it. The person after that had it. Roy has it now. When you see an emergency alert that does not name the reason for the emergency, follow the instructions anyway. The absence of a named reason does not mean there is no reason. It may mean the reason does not fit into a named category, and the person issuing the alert has used the closest available category and put the instructions that experience has established as correct into the text. And the instructions are correct even when the category is approximate. When you see language in an alert that does not match any emergency type you are familiar with, follow the instructions anyway. The language was chosen by someone who had more information than the system could officially carry, and they put into the alert what the alert could hold, and what the alert could hold was the instructions, and the instructions work. When the alert tells you to stay in interior rooms and not open exterior doors and windows and not respond to sounds from outside, follow those instructions. Follow all of them, especially that last one. I have thought about that specific instruction many times since that Wednesday evening, and every time I think about it, I am more certain that whoever wrote it had a reason for writing it that was specific and observed and real. Do not respond to sounds originating outside your home. Follow the instruction. It is in the protocol because it was put there by someone who knew what the protocol was for. that person is not available to explain it. The protocol is available. The protocol is what you have. I still work my shifts. I still sit at the workstation and watch the feed with the same attention I have brought to it for 11 years. But the quality of the attention is different now, in a way I have been trying to describe to myself for several months and have not fully managed. It is not fear. I want to be clear about that because I think fear would be the wrong response to what I know, and I do not feel it. What I feel is something closer to the shift in how you look at a familiar room after you learn that it has a longer history than you knew, that things happened in it before you were there that shaped what it is now in ways you are only beginning to understand. The emergency alert system has been doing this work since 1997 in its current form, and in predecessor forms before that, going back to the Cold War. It has been carrying the warnings that official emergency management needed to carry for a long time. And in that time, the people who authorized those warnings have included county emergency managers in rural counties who inherited protocols from the people who came before them, and the protocols included language for events that did not fit the name categories and have not been named yet. The system knows more than it can say. I used to find that thought unsettling when I considered it abstractly. I do not find it unsettling now. I find it, in a way I did not expect, reassuring. Somewhere tonight, there is a county emergency manager who inherited a protocol and who watches the southern edge of their county when the weather comes in from a specific direction, and who has an alert drafted and ready, and who knows what to do because the person before them knew what to do, and passed that knowledge down in the only form the system could carry it, which is the language of the alert itself and the instructions in the text. The instructions are correct. When the alert comes through, follow them. That is the whole of what the system asks. It has always been enough.